does programs that are very transformative, community-based in many sectors, security sector, agriculture sector, or agroecology as they call it. Uraia is Kenya's national civic education program. They started as NSEP on the eve of the 2003 elections that removed the one-party regime, quote unquote, of Moi. So maybe we need to have confidence that this corruption that is eating us, impunity, failure to uphold rule of law, we can also deal with it because as a country we have dealt with difficult things. So we are really happy to have and grateful to these organizations for hosting us. And for us to kick off, we will have a panel who will discuss these findings with a view to asking, what are we doing well? What do we need to do better?
So I'm really grateful, and you can see the excitement even on my face, that we convene and here we are, champions of devolution. So Your Excellency, the Governor, Baraza, Governor for Kakamega County and the Chair Finance Committee, just to echo who we are so that we place this conversation correctly, Kenya Devolution CSO Working Group is an umbrella network of all the 47 county level CSO networks. So we have 47 counties and each county has a county level civil society organizations network. I'm sure if you come from a county, probably you know of one or two networks. So the Kenya Devolution CSO Working Group brings together all these 47 county level CSO networks for primary objective of championing effective implementation of devolution. When Governor walked in, I told him he's our champion number one. Why am I saying that? If we were forming an army to go to speak to Treasury to release funds almost immediately for the financial year 25-26, probably would make Governor Baraza our commander. Let's clap for him. I'm saying that because I know the fights he has fought in terms of, speaking for COG authoritatively on the financial situation of counties and what needs to be done. So the working group's objective is to create a platform where we can have conversations around, implementation of devolution, especially informed by the objects of devolution, Article 174. I'm saying object of devolution because for us, the promise of devolution means a lot for citizens. Devolution is a lifeline for citizens. Think about the services citizens expect of county governments. Clean, safe, and adequate water. Those are rights enshrined in our constitution. Access to affordable, adequate, and quality healthcare services. Uko mashinani, the first line of defense when it comes to our health is the county government. The structures put right from the, primary healthcare upwards. Agriculture and food security. You say food is life. So if counties don't operate optimally, then we have a problem with, our existence at the very core. So this network exists to amplify the voice of citizens on effective implementation of devolution. And just to be very clear, our motto is devolution must work. Because if it doesn't work, we are nowhere. So our rallying call, our motto is devolution must work. Representative of the Embassy of Royal Danish Embassy, I acknowledge your presence. I think you walked in as I had mentioned, so karibu sana. So Devolution Conference, now coming to this conference, we consider it as a very important space for dialogue on effective implementation of devolution. Though we have our own challenges, and I will say it in terms of the costs of attending this conference, but we still believe it's still important because if we were cooking food, we have different responsibilities. Those who are on the front line, who have higher responsibility, convene here at the Devolution Conference. So if our food, gets burnt or it's not well cooked, then the people with the answers are people in this room. So we've been championing for citizen voice in the DevCon. And now that COG said that it's time to listen to citizens, we were planning to have a parallel citizen devolution conference sometimes last year. But when COG said we are ready to listen to you, we said we are going to speak loudly, clearly, and hopefully convincingly. A 2-day, rigorous conversation with all the CSO networks from across the 47 counties. Some of the stakeholders who are here were present. We invited even our friends and champions. But the 2-day consultation identified 3 key threats to effective implementation of devolution, or 3 key issues that would stand between, the devolution promise and citizens. And the first one is the transfer of all functions and attendant resources. We learned that county governments are not operating optimally because, one, there is issue of duplication of functions, and even the functions they have are not, they are not well costed, and all the resources are not devolved as required by Schedule 4 of the Constitution of Kenya, 2010. And we were doing this on the backdrop of a commitment by His Excellency the President. And I'm happy he has recalled in this conference that he said within 60 days, all functions, and the attendant resources need to go to counties. The second issue is the issue of corruption. Corruption is a real threat to devolution. As you all know, I think it has been mentioned previously that we lose up to 2 billion a day. That was a very authoritative voice. And for us, we see if this 2 billion, the opportunity cost, if this 2 billion is allocated to counties, there is a very huge opportunity there to improve services. So if 2 billion and 360 days, we're talking about an additional 760. So, one EACC director, we want this 700 billion saved to go to agriculture, to go to water, to go to education. But the citizen position paper will be, elaborated. Finally, is the issue of meaningful public participation. As the Kenya Devolution CSO Working Group, we identified lack of political will. It's clearly indicated, all these things people talk about, legislation, structures. For us, we feel that's not the issue. The issue is, the goodwill to implement meaningful public participation, from how we share information, I think has been alluded here, to how we mobilize citizens to attend to these engagements, both at the county and at the national level, and also how feedback is provided in terms of the informing citizens' voice, informing the decision. So those 3 issues to us mean a lot. As many people discuss other things, we said for us, and we validated this position through a process. We did a rapid survey, and the results will be shared here. From over 2,000 citizens responded. We also did regional consultative forums. That was our mini devolution conference, and these issues were echoed. And finally, we had a national CSO pre-devolution conference where we enriched and adopted the position paper. So as we sit here today, as I conclude, mine is to urge us to have a honest conversation and recommit ourselves to this promise of devolution. Let's be honest, let's say what needs to be done. For us, we are looking at what is the tipping point for these issues, for transfer of function. What must be done, and who should do what, and how soon. So we hope to disseminate the position paper, to engage, and finally recommit. And in that regard, I say devolution must work. Asanteni sana. I hope we'll have a very fruitful deliberation.
Mwere, I'm the CEO of Act Change Transform, and my task is very simple. First, to recognize the presence of Your Excellency, Governor of Kakamega. I bumped into him yesterday and I said, Governor, I sent you a letter. Did you find it? And he said, yes, I did, and I will make time to come. Thank you, Your Excellency, for coming. Thank you, Secretary Mahat, CEO Kipkirui, our 2 colleagues from EACC. I want to save all the time that we have on the clock for the conversations that follows. So my task was simple, to just welcome you. We are excited as ACT and our colleagues, with the support of the Embassy of Denmark in Nairobi, to have organized this side event. We were afraid at the beginning if we will make it to the end, because there were too many things to move around. But we are glad we are here, and I'm looking forward for the conversation. And thank you, Wanjiru, for accepting to moderate this.
Eva Waindi, the Executive Director of the Uraia Trust. Karibu.
Apart from recognizing our eternal friend Kimani, thank you very much, Jael. My pleasure too, Mheshimiwa. it is very difficult at times to talk about my country at a time like this, because we all know what ought to be done and we all know what is not working. And we keep on asking ourselves, really, what are we bewitched? Is it that we are incompetent, or we just don't give a damn? Because we all know that the best part of our constitution is the part on devolution. We all know that. We all know that between 380 to 400 billion goes to our counties. We all know that. And therefore, the disconnect here is, where then is the problem? Because after the pumping of billions for the past 13 years or so, then the expectation is that we would all be living in heaven, small heavens across the country. That is not the case. But like I said in the morning, again, we have to be appreciative of the fact that we've come from very far as a country, and we are really making strides as a country. We do not expect to hit the high notes immediately, but our expectation is that the next generation will find this country good enough for them not to be going to Saudi Arabia or to Yemen or to go to sell drugs in Myanmar, because the country will be so well taken care of by the leadership across the country and at the national level that our young people will have a country to be proud of. That is what bothers me as a person and as a sector and as a Kenyan taxpayer. We have enough in this country. I've said that numerously across this country. We have enough. And we have enough talent. And like was said by Senator Kajwang, every part of this country has something, either in terms of talent or in terms of natural resource, that ought to be harnessed together to make a very beautiful symphony of a country. That is not really where it ought to be. We still have cases where people are still dying of very terrible diseases because our hospital. And like the president said, we still have, thievery and thuggery in our most for the opportunity to country. I am sure that wherever he is, Odhiambo Mbai must be very proud that what he thought as a concept is now coming to fruition, and that the country is quickly taking shape. And I'm not saying this because he's here, but I have traversed Western Province many years since birth, and I can tell you for sure, and not because you're here, that when you now get to Kakamega, you see a different town. When you get to my home town of Kisumu, you see a different part of the country, not like it was before. But I'm not just interested in pockets. I'm interested in the whole. Can I see the same in Mandera? Can I see the same in Wajir? Can I see the same in Kwale? And can I see the same in Turkana? Our 54 million people deserve dignity. It is part and parcel of the Constitution. And that cannot happen until we entrench and we ensure that indeed devolution works. What are the real challenges? Kibet has already mentioned what are the real problems that affect devolution. But I would like to go a little deeper with figurative expression of this wonderful bird that is in the crow family. I've used this example many times before, and it's more than just an example. There is a bird in the, and if you can Google the bird that makes the biggest nest, there is a bird that makes the biggest nest in the family of crow. It's born to make the biggest nest. That is its nature. But once it's made the biggest nest, it takes its entire life collecting every nonsense around. It collects dry bones, condoms, metals, cups, until it dies. And I wonder, is that where most of our politicians are? Most of our leaders are? You collect and collect and collect, even things you don't need. We've got a life expectancy of 67. So it means that even if you live well enough, you'll be at 70. And beyond 70, of course, you can't eat meat, you can't eat, you can't take a drink, you can't take salt, you can't take sugar. Why do you need all this money? Let our people enjoy with the resources. Don't just hoard and hoard and hoard. Remember, the most famous leaders in this continent, in our generation, didn't have all that money. Mahatma Gandhi didn't have all that money. All what he did was to be humble enough and to lead his people with dignity. The same with Mandela, the same with Nyerere. Actually, for Nyerere, they're even building him a house posthumously. It's not about money, it's not about what you collect. When you are in leadership, be it in the family, be it in the institutions that we lead, be it in the counties that you lead, be it in the country, the real impact of your leadership is not how much you've hoarded, it's how many lives you've touched and touched sustainably. Thank you.
Already in preparation of this conference, there's been intense consultation with civil society. How has that gone? So as we continue our deliberations, please be thinking about what has worked, what have we done well that we need to do more of, and what do we need to do better? Because we want actionable solutions. We don't want to be a talk shop. It then gives me very great pleasure to invite the next guest, and I'll be asking that in order of protocol, that our next guest will be the one to introduce our key guest. And our next guest is a representative of an institution that has defended devolution even when it was difficult for development partners to defend devolution. At the onset of devolution in 2013, there was a lot of pressure from the national government that all funds going to projects at the local level would go through the national government. And some of the brave development partners looked at the constitution and said, but no, our constitution requires that that money goes straight to the counties because these are not small national governments. These are distinct entities under Article 6.2 that need to be recognized for their distinctness, and that this needed to be done on a basis of cooperation. So the Royal Danish Embassy is one of those that from the word go supported devolution, not just in word, but in practice, as well as putting big investments in health and other important sectors that are transformative for devolution and for the people of Kenya. We also have a representative who's a good friend of devolution, a good friend of civil society, who works very closely with government, civil society, and citizens alike for that better Kenya. It gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Joseph Kimani, representative of the Royal Danish Embassy. Karibu.
Hapa leo na nitoe hongera zangu kwa kikundi kazi cha asasi za kijamii, the working group, kwa sababu ya kufanya kazi hii safi kabisa. Na pia nitoe shukrani zangu za dhati kwa baraza la magavana kwa kutuwezesha kuwa hapa leo. Tuwapigie makofi tafadhali. Naleta salamu kutoka balozi wetu Stefan Shoneman ambaye ameniambia nilete salamu zake za dhati. Nimekuja huku pia na mwenzangu yuko hapa leo, anaitwa Philip Akelo. Philip, pengine unaweza simama. Philip ndio anasimamia mambo yetu ya climate action, na pia yule ambaye ni mkuu wa mambo ya maendeleo ya Denmark hapa anazungumzia kikundi kingine, na atakuja kabla panel iishe leo ya hapa hivi. Nataka kutoa hoja tatu kuhusiana na ugatuzi. Ya kwanza ni kusisitiza ya kwamba ugatuzi hauwezi fanikiwa bila kuhusisha kikamilifu asasi za kijamii. Mnakubaliana na mimi? Ikiwa nakubaliana na mimi, basi clap once. Kwa sababu asasi za kijamii ni kio cha jamii. Kwa sababu asasi za kijamii ndizo zinahusiana kwa ukamilifu na kwa ukamilifu na wananchi. Na nadhani kila mtu atakubaliana na mimi nikisema ya kwamba sauti za wananchi lazima zisikizwe. Ama vipi wenzangu? Na kwa hivyo ndio sisi kama ubalozi wa Denmark, wakati tulikuwa na mkutano na asasi kadhaa hapa, uraia na wale wengine, walikuja na wakatuuliza kuna jambo ambalo tunaweza fanya pamoja ili kuweza kuunganisha asasi za kijamii za kuhusiana na ugatuzi. Na tukasema ndio, kwa sababu tunajua ya kwamba tukiweza kuwa na vikundi hivi tutaweza basi kusema ya kwamba sauti za Wakenya zinaweza kutekelezwa katika ugatuzi. Na hiyo ndio maana tulisema lazima tufanye kazi na nyinyi. Asasi hizi za kijamii zinafanya mambo mengine ambayo pengine mashirika mengine hayafanyi. La kwanza, wanafanya utafiti. Na mimi na wengine hapa wengi sana tumehudhuria vikao vingi sana ambavyo tumekuwa basi tuki launch reports kadhaa na kuonyeshana ya kwamba, na tulikuwa Nakuru wiki iliyopita, tulikuwa tunafanya uzinduzi mwingine. Asasi za kijamii zinatoa utafiti mwingi sana, na utafiti huu ni kuhusiana na mambo yote ambayo tunatekeleza kwa ugatuzi. Kwa hivyo, hiyo ni sababu nyingine ambayo tunasema ya kwamba lazima asasi hizi za kijamii ziweze kuhusishwa kikamilifu katika ugatuzi. Hoja ya pili, asasi hizi zinatekeleza miradi mbalimbali. Na kuna jambo moja ambalo asasi hizi zinafanya. Zinasisitiza uwazi katika uongozi. Na najua Mheshimiwa Gavana, kuna asasi nyingi ambazo ziko kule Kakamega. Na tunashukuru sana ya kwamba unahusiana na asasi hizi. Wakitaka kusema jambo kwako, unawakubalisha. Lakini wanafanya hivyo si kwa sababu hawapendi serikali yao. Wanafanya hivyo kwa sababu wanaipenda serikali yao zaidi. Na ndio wanakuja wanasema, mahali ambapo wanataka uwazi, wanakuja na wanakuwa na mtagusano, wanakuwa na mazungumzo na serikali yao. Kwa hivyo ni sababu kubwa sana ya kuweza kuhusisha asasi zetu za kijamii. Asasi hizi pia zinatekeleza majukumu mengi ambayo yanahusiana na ugatuzi. Out of the 14 devolved functions, utapata asasi hizi ziko katika sekta nyingi. Na kwa hivyo sisi kama ubalozi wa Denmark tunafurahi ya kwamba kikundi kazi hiki cha ugatuzi kinahusisha mashirika mbalimbali ambayo yanaambatana na zile devolved function. Nikimalizia, inakumbuka Rais wa awamu ya 4 wa Muungano ya Jamhuri ya Tanzania, Mheshimiwa Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, alipokuwa akitafuta kura, aliwaomba wenzake wa Tanzania, akawaomba na akasema akiwa rais atawaongoza kuifanya kazi kwa ari mpya, nguvu mpya na kasi mpya. Kwa hivyo sasa, wenzangu, nawaomba sisi sote tuitekeleze ugatuzi kwa kasi mpya, nguvu mpya na bidii mpya. Na nitaomba turudie pamoja: ari mpya, kasi mpya na nguvu mpya. Hicho kibwagizo kinanifurahisha sana, na ni matumaini yangu kwamba tukimaliza kongamano hili la ugatuzi, tutaenda nyumbani, tutaenda kwa mashirika yetu na kutekeleza ugatuzi tukitumia wito huo. Asanteni sana.
I want to speak to the status of the transfer of functions because that is one of the areas that we are very clear and keen to understand. I know the President alluded to it in his speech. The 4th schedule of the Constitution is very clear that you need to assign functions for the 2 levels of government. The devolved functions should be undertaken by the counties and, of course, the functions for the national government. That was the framers of the Constitution. And as at now, of course, we have the status reports, which pursuant to the summit that we had last year, the coordinating summit chaired by the President himself, we decided that all the functions which have not been devolved should be unbundled, should be costed, and then transferred to counties pursuant of the principle of subsidiary transfer, because the functions must be accompanied by resources. So this principle of subsidiarity is very clear. We know very well that when the ECD functions were transferred to counties, the functions were not costed. So we find counties are undertaking the ECD infrastructure without the costing. So having taken stock of that, we said we need a fresh start. And I'm very happy that pursuant of the resolutions of last Devolution conference, at least there's some progress. Number 1, the 14 functions have been unbundled. There was delineation that was done and gazettement of those 14 functions which are devolved. Now the next conversation is now the issue of the costing. Of course, there was initial costing that was done by IGRTC giving us almost 258 billion Kenya shillings, which we are now wanting to go step by step just to confirm that these functions that have been costed, what are the attendant resources, function by function. One of the other status, of course, was to make sure that we identify the assets. We now look at the human resources required to execute those functions. Of course, also looking at the liabilities concerned. And that is now where we are. I'm very happy that the president also alluded to the fact that, yes, the assets have been costed and they'll be transferred to the respective counties. But the bigger conversation on the 14 functions which have been unbundled. What are the human resources required? How is the principle of subsidiarity going to be implemented, especially on the resources following functions? Because we appreciate the little milestones that we have so far achieved in terms of financing of devolved functions. Of course, it may not be enough, but at least whatever has been devolved in terms of the costings, we need to see that now being implemented. So the next steps, we expected in this budget of 25-26 financial year, we have some specific, intentional, and deliberate efforts, at least to see budgetary allocation. Even in the MUTEF budget for 25-26, it was not there. So what we expect, which I believe that the CSOs are going to support us, is to make sure that, number one, when the resources required for specific functions have been identified, we need to see deliberate effort from the national government through IGRTC and the National Treasury, that we have all those resources included in the medium-term expenditure framework for purposes of budgeting for the next financial year, so that when we have a conversation around DORA, we are clear that out of this budget, then it is clear that we have taken into consideration. We have always challenged the national government on the budgeting process because the budget for counties is never itemized. You're just given a block figure. It's actually an incremental budget, moving from 387 now to 450. That 415 didn't come very easy, as you know. It was through mediation. We want deliberate efforts from the National Treasury officials, because most often than not, we always challenge that, you know what, our National Assembly, the work of the National Assembly is to consider the budget policy statement as proposed by the National Treasury. So I think where we need to baptize people on devolution is those officials in the National Treasury. They need to walk the talk. The president is very clear, very committed, but the fellows in the ministry at the National Treasury should also walk the talk. And that's why we are saying that going forward, for the 14 functions which you are delineated and gazetted, why can't we now see specific amounts being attached to them? So that in the medium-term expenditure framework for 26-27 financial year, as well as the fiscal year that is preceding, we need to see all that come into play. The other issue, of course, that is extremely important is that going forward, let us see participation, including the CAF representation, because at the conversation of DORA, it is only the executive that has conversation with the Senate and the National Assembly. We want to see more of the civil society. We also want to see more of the county assemblies forum joining our COG to push for resources. Because when you look at the budget making process, we normally lose out. We only come on board, especially our CAF members, when all is lost. So what I want us to do is, for the 2025-26 financial year, of course, the supplementary budget, we can still push a few items for commitment to be realized. Let the costing be done. Let us not see devolved functions being budgeted for in the National Assembly, because it has happened before, it's still happening right now. I remember you pointed out in the last budget for 25-26, almost 29.5 billion Kenya shillings for specific devolved functions being itemized, budgeted for under the national government. For example, construction of level 3s and level 4s, the maraming of roads, ambulances, What is happening is most of these MPs may also be having aspirations. So they put money for devolved functions in the budget. By virtue of being members of the budget committees, they'll want to put money there. And then they come and start constructing health centers. They also have money for ambulances. They have money for doing maram roads, right? And yet, those are devolved functions. Of course, we had a heated issue on the RMLF. I expected also civil society to join us so that we can have a conversation on RMLF, because the Constitution is very clear on the classification of roads. We have the national trunk roads and the county roads. But because we didn't have a lot of support from civil society, those are some of the areas that we are saying is a systematic attempt to glow back on devolution, because if the Constitution is very clear on the classification of roads, and this RMLF is collected at the pump, so every county is entitled to the road maintenance levy. But because, again, there was some bit of interference, civil society kept quiet. When governors ask for money for roads, we are told you have too much money. And yet, the budget is never itemized. So going forward, for purposes of transparency and accountability, we want budgets at the time of DORA to be itemized. We want to see at least specific allocation of those devolved functions being implemented in the MUTEF budget, as well as the budget for 25-26 financial year. That one will demonstrate the commitment from national government. Others, where we sit so far, I can say that devolution has really transformed the country. And the fact that we are having these devolution conferences in various regions is a demonstration that what is devolved is working. And you can clearly see how Homa Bay is lit. This is now the mantra that we are going to push as COG. With the help of civil society, I'm very sure that we are going to transform this country. And of course, matters of accountability will come in. And accountability starts from proper budgeting that is itemized. I thank you.
Asasi za kijamii is civil society organizations. And then we were reminded call. Without any delay, I'd like to invite Mr. Michael Juma.
Thank you. Allow me, colleagues, to ride on the protocol that has been set. Understand what citizens have to say about inclusion and equity, and jointly worked with Twaweza East Africa. Twaweza conducted a survey in March, which covered 3,658 respondents across the country. And then towards the late July and the early part of August, Kenya Devolution CSO Working Group then commissioned the other study, which covered 2,250 individuals or respondents across the 47 counties. And so the issues I'm going to present here covers three main areas. One is the transfer of money. Functions were already transferred, and the CEO IGRTC will be able to help us explain if that is right. Because the president indicated, and it has been said here, but by His Excellency, by the Gazette notice of 16th December, all the functions were already transferred. So what is remaining, according to the CSOs, is the resources. The second area is accountability. And the third one is citizen engagement or public participation. It depends where you pick it. Now, these surveys show on devolution, there was a question on devolution as to how citizens think the direction devolution is moving 13 years down the line. And this is what we found out in March. 48% of Kenyans said we are on the right direction, which means we were not 50%. However, the survey July, August, it increased to 50, which means now 50% of Kenyans are saying we seem to be on the right track. A good movement. About 67% of the respondents in August, July, August, who said we are on the right direction, were of the view that the reason why we are on the right direction is because their devolution has taken services closer to them. So citizens feel services, because of devolution, is getting closer to them, which is a very positive one. But then there are a number of teething issues that they talked about. They include, there are many, but I'll just cite very few. Poor accountability, misappropriation of public resources, conflict of interest. President talked earlier on about the conflict of interest law. More funds going to recurrent as opposed to development. Weak coordination between the two levels of government. Delay in transfer of equitable share to county governments. And market, many people say it is national government giving counties money. No, it is equitable share of the revenue collected nationally. Stalled projects and pending bills, among others. So these are the issues that Kenyans are saying are threatening devolution and need to be addressed. And so what Kenyans said when we asked them what needs to be done, they said devolution should be implemented as contemplated in the Constitution. And earlier on in the main plenary, a number of colleagues, president and speakers talked about Article 174. It is very clear on the objectives of devolution, what Kenyans aspired when they came up with the devolved governance system. And so that's what Kenyans want to see, devolution implemented as in the Constitution 2010. Now, in regard to transfer of functions, we have talked about the Gazette notice of December 2024, 16th. And I don't want to repeat it. Before that, IGRTC, and His Excellency talked about it, had done some costing, preliminary costing, that indicated that 272 billion of the function they had costed was to go to county governments. That is over and above the money that counties were getting the previous year. Then IGRTC did an omnibus bill that has several pieces of legislation that need to be processed through Parliament, which was tabled at the AG's office in March this year and in Parliament in May. Now that law, that omnibus bill, is yet to be processed to date, unless we haven't got the latest information. Now then we ask citizens, what do they think about this money that national government is holding, the money meant for county governments? And 74% of citizens said they want the national government to release that money immediately to county governments, to enable county governments to do their services. And on that basis, the civil society organizations have taken a position that the national government, it is a demand to the national government through the Treasury to release that the money meant for counties to county governments immediately this year. So, His Excellency would tend to, the position of the CSOs is not next year. And they're saying, based on the preliminary costing that IGRTC had done, it should be no less than 272 billion. In other words, 272 billion over and above 387 billion that the counties got the previous year. And so when we put that together, it comes to around 667 billion. And that's what the position the CSOs will be pursuing. So when we come to next year, we'll be talking a different thing because the costing is still going on. I mean, the finalization of the costing is still going on. But we would like to hear, what is the timeline for the costing? When will it end? Because it is now 13 years, and the costing, there have been several meetings, and we may end up next June when we are back here to be told the costing is still going on. So we would like to get to hear the timeline. The president didn't talk about the timeline today, and we would really appreciate if timelines for finalization of those costings should be done. And the CSOs are saying it need to be expeditiously. It need to be finished expeditiously. The final one on that is that this omnibus bill need to be processed, need to be prioritized by Parliament, and it can cause any delay in transfer of funds. It should be out of the way. Then finally, the National Treasury should release the funds meant for counties as by law provided in the Public Finance Management Act. So there's nothing outside the law. The CSOs are saying, do it as per the law, do it as per the Constitution. And Evans, I think, the Mheshimiwa has challenged you. We have been trying to get the government. Now today, I think His Excellency has said they want the CSOs. So I think this is a very good opportunity that we now have the Council of Governors also saying, we need the CSOs. Thank you so much, His Excellency, for that. Now, on accountability, a lot of talk, and I think the President talked about it very much. He said, it is not about money. It's about what we are doing with the resources that we have. Now, 68% of Kenyans indicated that they are not satisfied with the accountability in the use of public funds by both levels of government. And subsequently, 75 of them say tenders is a big problem. They disagree with the way tenders are managed, which is an indication that tendering process is one of the biggest problems when it comes to use of public resources. Availability and quality of government services, which is related to accountability, 51% are not satisfied. So only 49 are satisfied, 51 are not satisfied with the services. I think earlier on there was discussion about the services. The President talked about it a lot. On that basis, most Kenyans have this feeling that government, the entirety of government, that include the constitutional and public agencies, are not committed to the fight against corruption. Indeed, citizens say there's conspiracy by all in government against the citizens, that corruption is like a business, that they are protecting one another. If you are arrested, if you are corrupt, you are reported, the person who is supposed to investigate is interested in what you have stolen. If you are taken to court, the court is also interested in what you have stolen, and it is just a circus. So this is very interesting. There's a case that came, I attended a meeting in LREB because there were, in addition to the quantitative data, there was qualitative consultations across the regions by the CSOs on how data was obtained. So a gentleman from one of the counties reported a county government official at EACC office in Kisumu then. And then he was told, come back tomorrow after having left his document, so that then Kenyan citizens said they have lost interest in all the agencies, including parliament, including executive, including the prosecution, the entire justice system, that corruption will be managed in the country. And that's a very serious situation. The result then is that 72% of Kenyans said they have witnessed corruption in government, by government officers, but 64 said they'll never bother to report. They have never bothered to report because they say nothing will be done. So a very serious situation that Kenyans don't report because they don't believe any action will be taken. And so I want to repeat what Evan talked about. His Excellency, the former president of Kenya, talked about 2 billion shillings we were losing daily. And look at it, what can 2 billion shillings do? We did a calculation and realized that money alone would be adequate for currently the money the counties are getting. 2 billion. So corruption, and there'll be more change there that could do something else. So what citizens then said is that corruption is entrenched in our governance system and has been normalized within the government system, and there is lack of evidence that there is real fight of corruption, and that the process is politicized. So impunity, according to them, has been demonstrated by suspects celebrating. When somebody is accused of corruption and they win a case, which mostly they have corrupted the justice system, they are seen celebrating. So it was something that citizens consider a very serious issue. In other countries, that would not happen. So these are what the actions by CSOs. These are the action by CSOs and the demand. That CSOs, because citizens lack confidence in government, will strengthen their capacity and citizens to be more vigilant and proactive in holding the government accountable through social accountability. So the CSOs will invest more on social accountability to look at how things happen. And social accountability is not just about projects. It's the commitments that you make, how do you deliver them? If you say you are going to deliver on, for instance, having half of the youth employed in the government system, or the 2/3 rule, then that is a commitment that should be followed, not just money. Then CSOs have said they are going to do citizen lifestyle audit and have their reports. Because all these corrupt people live here with us in our villages, so people know them. And then CSOs are going to do what they are calling citizens' courts. So based on the social audit reports, citizens will sit and pass judgment and say this person is corrupt, and use that report to name and shame those individuals. And they'll also do public interest litigations and collaboration with critical institutions that mean good for the CSO, for the country. Then CSOs will also launch and sustain national dialogue on integrity, ethics, and accountability, which will also involve appreciating individuals, awarding certificates to those individuals that demonstrate that they mean good for accountability. And for governors whose counties are performing poorly, because it was said there are counties that are getting adverse reports annually and they're doing nothing, they'll be part of the name and shame. So the CSOs then demand from the government that a lifestyle audit legislation should be done and be implemented by Parliament, should enact it, and they'll be pushing for it. So we'll push for that. Then wealth declaration forms should be publicized and published so that then citizens can access them. Then constitutional amendment to the CDF, that the CDF, to have CDF and the affirmative action fund must be stopped, because MPs need to concentrate on their functions, which is not the executive functions, which they seem to be more concentrated on. And I think His Excellency talked about it earlier. Finally, on that, the public relations exercise that Kenyans see and selective prosecution in regard to corruption must stop. Finally, on public participation and citizen engagement, majority of citizens seem to be dissatisfied with the democratic processes. And they said when the Gen Zs exercise their right to democratic process, there were a lot of prosecution, not necessarily prosecution, suppression of freedom of expression and disappearances, abductions. So they are not happy about it. Then about 50% said they have engaged in public participation exercises, but the main concern is that these processes are largely used by the government to inform citizens of the decisions they have taken. They are not meaningful public participation. So citizens are just engaged for the sake of it. Finally, on that, the citizens said since they are rarely listened to, they have opted to use alternative constitutional means. So the Gen Z approach is just one. So citizens have got very many options, including talking to themselves. So in regard to this, what then citizens are demanding, and Kenyans, Kenyan civil society, is that the state and public officials must start listening to the citizens and do meaningful public participation. Don't go to public participation events or processes when you have already made the decision. Two is that there's a national legislation on public participation, which has been in every parliament. The bill is still pending in the current parliament, and the CSOs have said that the parliament should prioritize that bill. Yes, 1 minute here, not even 2. And then finally, rather the second last is the process where county governments, particularly the issue of supplementary budgets, where citizens do public participation, make decisions, and sometimes before implementation, supplementary budgets come. The CSOs have said this must stop because supplementary budgets, when they happen, they take what citizens wanted and replace it with the executive and the MCS. And there need to be a law that regulates supplementary budgets. Finally, there should be effective mechanisms for feedback to citizens when they participate, including telling them which of their views were not taken on board and why. Thank you very much.
It helped me in welcoming a person who has all our data needs from Twaweza East Africa, who is the executive director, Madam Anna Bwana, to help us in cracking and sifting through this data. Karibu sana, madam. A high level, because we have the right people in the room. We know the champions of devolution are here. So I think we are just going to have a very high level remark so that we go to the citizens and handle this elephant in the room called devolved functions, accountability, and public participation. Over to you, Bansi.
Allow me to acknowledge a friend of Kenya and head of development cooperation, Danish Embassy. Thank you, sir. Karibu sana. And we are now about transfer of functions, which has actually been a major topic since morning in the remarks at the opening tent, and with a governmental relations technical committee, our representative. Now, IG to ensure seamless transfer of functions from the national to the county government. We've had that came out last year. We would just want to hear from you because there's a big concern about when is this process going to be completed. So you could briefly tell us in just 2 minutes, what are you doing to fast track the process of transferring county functions? And when do you think we can expect this process to be completed? And if there is any support that the Intergovernmental Relations Committee requires, perhaps you could just mention that to us in just 2 minutes, sir.
This session. Thank you, the moderators, Mburu and Banis. First, let me clarify that Kipkuru Chepkwony is my name, and I'm the CEO of IGRTC, and not the Secretary of Governmental Relations. So the Secretary here, Mahat, who is the Secretary at State Department for Devolution. So straight to the question, and I want to appreciate the interest that this CSO working group has really expressed on this matter of the transfer of functions. One, I would want to confirm what the President alluded to in the morning, and what was also mentioned by the governor for the chair of Council of Governors, that yes, the gazettement of the unbundled functions and clarified functions was done on 16th of December. What does that then mean? I think it is good to clarify that the transfer of functions, we are not transferring the functions. We are transferring unbundled and clarified functions. And also to clarify that we are not assigning functions. The functions assigned by the Constitution under Schedule 4. So what we are doing is to end the functions as assigned. We are clarifying and unbundling functions which were assigned, which were transferred, some whose elements were not clear. That is the word unbundling, to be able to open, identify the elements of function. So that is the exercise that we are doing, so that we are clear that all functions to levels of government were assigned and were transferred by 2013 gazettement. What we are transferring is the unbundled, clarified function, which has created three components. One, we have now clarified assigned functions. Secondly, we have unbundled new elements in the functions as assigned. Thirdly, is out of that clarification and unbundling, we now have new elements that have come out of a function. That is to be clear. Then, we have, and I would answering all the questions that were listed during the presentation from the survey in my remarks. On the issue of the identification of legislation that not to the unbundled and clarified, I think mentioned in reference is not a bill that is going to be adopted or processed as a singular bill. We have identified 94 pieces of legislation that are not aligning. So it means all those legislations that were identified needs to be either reviewed, repealed, or amended to align. What has happened about the same? As mentioned, we have been able to transmit the 94 pieces of legislation to the Attorney General's office, also to Senate and National Assembly for further processing. What then is our role as IGRTC? Once we have identified and forwarded, the next person who will be asking that question, what is the status? Should be the AG or the National and Senate, National Assembly and Senate. On our end, since the principle of devolution is resources follow functions, what have in our commitment as guided by the, thank you, this is now better. As guided by the resolution of the 11th summit, is that we desire to ensure before the commencement of the next budget cycle, before CFSPs are developed and transmitted to the legislature in September, we should have been able to conclude identification of attendant resources. We should have been able to conclude also on identification of financial resources. There are two components of the resources. That is why I'm very clear. Currently, we are identifying attendant resources. Attendant in the sense, the elements of the functions that we have unbundled, that we have clarified, is to say we are convening all the stakeholders within the sector to identify if there is any resource, including human resource, assets, liabilities, that then are attendant to that function or that element of the function, including programs and projects. That then is the attendant resources, which we are currently about 80% complete. Within, by close of this month, we should be done with that process of attendant resources. Then we go to the next level of identification of the financial resources. And this then will be reflected on our initial rough estimate of 272 billion. Now, that 272 billion, first, we need to be very clear. I heard in the comments that we expect that the 272 billion will be plus and above the current allocation to the counties. That will not be right. It will not be legally right. Why? Like I said, we have unbundled functions. Some of the functions that we are making reference to have already been transferred to the counties. As we identify the attendant resources, including the financial resources, there might be elements, including what Governor mentioned, ECDs, because we have not unbundled ECDs. And he mentioned there were no resources that were allocated to that function. And there would be no new resources on our end because there is no new element to that function. That is one. Two is the formula that we are using to do the financial resourcing. We are looking at budget rationalization, not scientific formula. So we are looking at the budgets for the last 3 or 5 years and doing an average to identify where then these resources have been budgeted for. And that process, if you ask for the timeline, we expect, like I said, it is a commitment by the president, it is a resolution by the summit that in the next CFSP, in the next fiscal strategy paper, in the next MTF from September this year, that should be considered, and we expect the budget consideration for the next budgetary estimate.
Survey, 74% of Kenyans say that they want the resources belonging to counties for county functions to be released immediately. And Daktari has explained the process in detail and where they are at. And my question to you is that what measures do you think that the State Department should be taking to advance the finalization of the transfer of functions, considering the feedback that Daktari has given us? Very brief, in just a minute and a half. Thank you.
After my comment, I will require to pray. Maybe just under 10 minutes, then I will be back to the stage. Thank you for having me. Let me appreciate the organizers. It's a good session. And to the participants, I think what you will hear is the truth, but not misogynist. In terms of transfer of functions, I think the CEO has spoken about it. Functions have been transferred even before the county governments came in 2013. Are you aware of that? By 1st of February 2013, 1 month to the elections, functions have been transferred. Again, transferred twice in 2013. That is August in 2013. Then in 2014, transfer was made again in January. In 2015, in 2016, in January, again it was made. That was by TA. IGRTC did transfer about 3 times, I think. One on betting and casinos, another one on libraries, and the recent bulk transfer. These transfers does not all mean new functions, as been stated. It means clarification of some elements of a function. The recent Gazette notice contains firefighting as a function. Firefighting was also transferred in the first initial transfer of 2013, February 1st. In regards to resources allocation, there is an issue. Resources allocation, there is an issue about it. The issues about it is that, one, there is the element of costing. How do we do costing?
So
do we do it in a scientific way?
Mr. San, you to just tell us.
I'm coming to that. Resources. What we are currently doing is that we identify the attendant resources that have been previously been allocated to this function. It's never a scientific way. So there are issues around delays in transfer, fiscal transfers. And that's something we are currently engaged with the National Treasury, IBEC, and other stakeholders to come up with a design for faster and efficient fiscal transfers, especially on the conditional allocations. So we are coming up with laws that help in terms of County Conditional Allocation Act that normally delays every year since inception. So there is something we are doing around that, and we hope in this current financial year, this act will be passed prior, and some of the funds will not be subjected to that act, especially the conditional grants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Where you sit, once the national government has finalized the process of unbundling and ensuring that we have the resources, how would it look like when the counties are having all the functions and all the costings?
First and foremost, I want the fact that now we are talking about costing the functions, because the first thing that is critical is for functions to be effectively implemented. They must be costed. So that costing element, which preliminary you have given a figure, is a welcome thing, because the budget making process, usually we talk about activity-based, but because the costing now informs that conversation, I think it will make it easier for the key players in the budget making process, starting from the Commission of Revenue Allocation, before they even propose any amount that is supposed to go to the counties and the national government. That will form the basis. Right now, there are many functions which counties are implementing, but they have not been costed. So when this process is fully done, we expect most of the functions now to be undertaken effectively at the counties, because we shall be having attendant resources. There will be no excuse. Governors will be expected to be accountable. People will expect services. If there are municipalities, people now will expect services. The biggest challenge right now is there are many expectations, but the funding is not adequate. So with the adequate funding, service delivery will be improved. People will see and enjoy and realize the full effect and impact of devolution.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If effective budgeting will be facilitated when the citizen perspective. Our convener, the Kenya Devolution CSO's working group convener, Evans Kibet, from a CSO's perspective and from a citizen's perspective, what would the transfer of all functions?
Thank you. I think we for example, national budgets, and we see, the national government still budgeting for functions like drilling of boreholes, water supply, and we know, of course, behind the principle of subsidiarity was to also enhance efficiency in this function, and also the issue of public participation, transparency, and accountability. So for us, we want to see, all the functions or elements of functions that are still being held at the national government transferred, and the attendant resources, and also, including even capacities to do so. There's been a conversation as to whether counties have capacity to deliver these services. And I think devolution, I think no one is a reservoir of knowledge and expertise. This capacity can be developed. We have seen what counties have done for the last 13 years. So for us, we want to see, optimal service delivery. And I was just chatting here again with, whispering with Dr. here. We're looking at, for example, running a health center. You look at majority of the health centers and dispensaries, which are very, provide primary health care, are, they're not operating optimally. For example, if you look at human resource needed to serve a health center, we require close to 12 million, annually. Do that by the number of health centers that are run according to the previous costing of functions. So we want to get an update on how much exactly does it take to do this, county services, so that it informs our advocacy. But the goal for us is to see counties delivering all the 14 functions optimally, so that the livelihoods of citizens improve.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Not happen unless we have the functions fully transferred and we have citizen voices in decision-making processes. And I want to invite my co-moderator to understand where we at with public participation.
Transfer to the counties, and the result and the resources to follow them. And we would really want to hear from the citizens who are represented by Chris and Ojijo. But before we get there, I would want to hear what the data is saying. What are citizens saying in terms of public participation? Are citizens okay with the status of public participation and governance? Are they okay with where we are? So we would want to know from Twaweza East Africa, who have been doing quite a number of researches on what Sautism Kenya outcomes on the surveys. What are the key highlights of outcomes in terms of public participation, so that we dive into what citizens are saying and whether they agree with those views.
And I'll start with the good news, which is that a vast majority of Kenyans do support devolution in principle. So there is an endorsement on devolution. Citizens feel that it's important, that it brings it makes leaders more accessible.
We've also seen that in some ways the levels of public participation have increased slightly. So since 2015 to now, there has been a slight increase in the attendance of county meetings and in the number of people who say that they've spoken up or contributed in these meetings. But the flip side of that is that overall it's still very low. So less than a quarter of Kenyans report that they have attended county meetings, and even less so that they've voiced up in these meetings. And that's the average. If you dive deeper into certain demographic groups, it's even lower. So if you're a woman, if you live in more urban areas, if you're a young person, you're much, much less likely to have been involved in these public meetings and to have felt that you've meaningfully contributed. There are a number of concerns that citizens have raised, and many of them have already been mentioned, including the levels of corruption and mismanagement of resources. But in terms of public participation, many citizens feel that they're included as a rubber stamp, particularly in consultations at the planning process. But there's no substantial engagements, there's no real concerted efforts to involve them further on in the process. And for me, this leads us to what I think is the most interesting and maybe telling piece of data, which is that around 90% of Kenyans feel that they're not being listened to, either by their county leaders or their national leaders. And I think this is so important because it really speaks to the fact that many Kenyans, especially young Kenyans, are looking at alternative spaces and ways to have their voices heard, because the formal avenues and channels for public participation are not working for them and they feel they're not being listened to. But similarly, I think it speaks to the question of trust. So do our leaders trust us as citizens enough to meaningfully engage us and allow us to influence not just planning, but the actual delivery of services and of rights? And equally, do citizens trust their leaders and their governments enough to want to participate in these processes and to look for meaningful ways to do so? So if we think that 90% of us don't think we're being listened to, that 90% is going to be less willing to engage in public participation unless we transform how that looks like. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, for those insights. And what you're saying really resonates with Gage, and feel that public participation does not add up to anything. Then they are likely to just say it's a wild goose chase, and they just abandon the process. And there comes in issues of accountability and of not following processes. So I would want to hear from a citizen's representative, Japheth Ojijo. From a citizen's perspective, what do you see as the role of citizens in fighting corruption through the constitutionally provided avenue of public participation? So the position of the working group before we go to the EACC, so that they can tell us at the institutional level how that adds up. So Ojijo, please.
I think I go to the role of citizens in fighting corruption. citizens will be only effective in fighting corruptions if they have been actively involved in the designs. So I think the first question we should be asking ourselves is that why has public participation failed to transform governance despite the progressive legislations we have? And secondly, we should ask ourselves, then what is this effective participation that is hindering citizens to be effectively involved in the corruption? And I'm very much happy somebody mentioned Article 174, but was not specific to where the problem is. The garden of fighting corruption will become a very difficult thing, because in the fighting corruption, you must be involved in the design. So if we are involved in the exercising of the powers of the state actively, then the citizens will participate effectively in the design of anti-corruption ways. Otherwise, citizens, including the civil societies, have been participating so much in social accountability to do oversight of government, which we have even as a CSO networks, even CSOs in country, is that we fail to transform social accountability to at least fit in the service providers and power holders. Because remember, these are citizens first before their delegated powers. So we delegate powers to those people who should be empowered. But if we are on the same status, then we are different in terms of the functioning. So as much as we are employing social accountability efforts, we should ground our social accountability to effectively promote and empower even the service providers, not only the citizens.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gijo. You brought in a very important point on social accountability and the role that civil society has been doing over the years. So, Chris, what are the weak links and why are we still not getting it right?
Mburu, thank you for this. I think the weaker link is us. Civil society among us are in bed in some cases with the government. We are competing to steal with them. We have never felt the pain that we need to have. So I think that's where the problem of disconnect starts. We are too comfortable in this arrangement of co-option in the name of either in the committees of the government, to the extent that we are in bed. Two, we have never felt the pain. Corruption, if we treat it abnormally, we will treat it abnormally the way we're treating it now. Because we are dancing salsa dance, we are passing, we are organizing instead of organizing to kill the dragon. Civil society are in the business of workshop. To me, is that we need to build movement. We need to speak to the unconverted to build the movement. And in some cases, petition anti-corruption to go home because they are not performing. We are saying, oh, they don't work. But what are we doing? Can we go to parliament to dissolve anti-corruption? If we have proved they are not working, can we go to parliament and dissolve ODP? Because these are institutions created by us. I tell you that because I have submitted many cases of anti-corruption. I have spoken over 10 years, no single prosecution. So I have even written to the chairman that we think we should go home because you are earning taxpayers' money for nothing. And if you look at what Mike read here, it said very well, people are tired with these institutions because if you go to anti-corruption, they tell, oh, we have the ODP recommended. I've not recommended for charge. And again, if you use, I go to court, I litigate. There is what President was saying of the judicial independence of the courts. They throw a matter out so that you can go to Court of Appeal, go to High Court. So the process of appealing tires you so that you drop because you are using your money. These people who are in the office using public money to go to court. MCAs, tech tenders, they are covered by the governor because they are one party. So we can't pretend that we don't know what is ailing us.
Yes.
It is us with us. So that the pain, we must have the pain to feel the pain. This is your public participation. We can't say is people have not felt the pain. People are still romanticizing. The day we'll start organizing citizens to push the governor out of the office, to push speaker out of the office, that's the day we start fighting corruption. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chris. And your points are very well taken. And now that EACC is here, the corruption of 10 years ago is different from the corruption of today. The thieves are becoming smarter. They are deploying new technologies. So EACC, please, you could tell us, what are you doing differently? Because we really need to change strategy and see how we can be able to counter corruption. So you will probably in 2 minutes tell us what you are doing differently so that the CAF, County Assemblies Forum, can end by saying how the MCAs are assisting in this war. So EACC.
Thank you so much for that. Because when we talk about devolution, and it is obvious that it's good. The issue is where we have the pockets of some holes, we need to look at it. As a commission, the magnitude of the problem is as big as the wananchi are seeing it. I had some statistics here of what the survey was doing, and funnily enough, I don't know what a coincidence, the survey which we released recently has got similar figures, 68, 67, and all that, which means the problem is across the board. What the commission is doing, because of the overwhelming nature of the cases of corruption, as a matter of fact, there are so many cases that we get, it is possible that wananchi can be frustrated, why have we not finalized all of them? We have, using the strategic direction that we have now to go into serious cases as per the direction so that we deal with those which have the highest impact. For one, we want to see how to recover assets which have been lost through corruption. And we see these assets which are need to be recovered are with us in the public. The people who are working in the county governments, we're talking about overnight millionaires, and we have to follow the money. This also adds to other assets like land. I had the president mention about the land which is has been now been gazetted. We have a lot of land loss because even the projects we are talking about, we are not going to have the land. Number two, we are now also training our guns on specific projects, high-value projects, so that we are able to follow the high-value projects. Number three, we have also the issue of working in partnership. When I hear the CSOs with the kind of resolution you are saying, you are going to start your courts, you are going to start, if done in the right structured way, it gives pressure to the public officers, us who are in the public. And there's nothing wrong with that because you need to give that pressure. So we can work in partnership in terms of educating the people so that we are able to have, again, more through those kind of action. So as a commission, we are not actually sitting idle. We have done quite a bit in the period between 2018 to 2024. We've recovered close to 28 billion of property, and this includes monies which are unexplained wealth within the public officers. We have cases in court right now in the same period, over 50 billion that we are following in the various stages of the courts. We have prosecuted close to 470 cases of people, and among those prosecutions, we have high-level prosecutions, because when you go to Kenyans, they want to ask how many governors have you done, how many PSS have you done, and there are quite a number in that nature. So we are pushing. When we have the many cases we receive, and I saw the result of we have about 10,500 cases in terms of bribery alone. We are not talking about the mega corruption, bribery alone. The numbers are so huge. So what we are doing as a commission is to say, can we have other cases being handled in other ways? But the major ones, those which have high value, which have high impact, we know, like if we have many cases, we are going to look at the high impact cases. Who is the personality that we are investigating? So the higher the office, the more impact. Number two, what is the amount of money involved? Number three, what is the nature in terms of the public interest? If money is lost because of bursary, it's affecting education. If money is lost because of hospitals, those are areas where we can have the highest impact. So as a commission, that's what we are doing, and there's a little bit more that we are doing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that nation. And anti-corruption efforts are about holding those who have responsibilities to account. And when you look at the three arms of government, we have the legislature. And one of the work of the legislature, national is oversight. And I want to invite what is the biggest challenge that you have encountered in asserting oversight in the counties? When you look at it, what is really so hard to hold the executive and yourself also to account? Because we've looked at Auditor General. What is this? Why do we have to wait for ESC to come and assert accountability? Yet the legislature is responsible for oversight.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad I'm sharing the stage with my governor and other leaders. Oversight is a responsibility of the citizen, a responsibility of other legislative institutions. The County Assembly is one of those institutions. After the Office of the Auditor General, after the Office of the Control of Budget. And the County Assembly has got a legislative oversight role. And part of why it is difficult for the County Assembly to engage effectively in oversight is because of lack of knowledge and support and goodwill from the people and also from the public, the leaders, the community leaders. I would say this because I cannot oversight unless I know where this money goes to. And therefore, if I do not participate in the budget making process, do not know the activities that are being assigned money on, I might not be in a position to better oversight these resources. It starts from there, the knowledge of where these resources is going to. Once I am aware, then I know when I'm doing my oversight, I'll go back and get to understand where has this money been utilized.
Yeah,
and when we get to where has this money been utilized, it simply means we are going back to the executive, where the MCS and the executive have to work in collaboration. And if I am not able to oversight my governor or oversight the ministries because I am afraid that maybe I will be intimidated, that is an issue. If I'm not able to ask questions because I do not understand where this money went to or where these resources have been allocated to, then that becomes a problem. So it starts with first the knowledge of the whole system you want to oversight, and then it goes to how well do we work with the executive to know where has these resources been allocated to and what work has been done. The most critical issue that hinders oversight is the fact that the MCS and the executive are sharing one bed.
Thank you very much for putting it out here. Have about that thing. There's an interesting insight from the survey that we just are dissatisfied with how we are doing tendering in the counties. Your Excellency, Governor. What do you think that we can do as county governments to ensure that there's transparency and openness in the tendering process? Because 74% is actually a counties is not transparent.
Now, one of the strategies of making sure that there is transparency is openness in tendering, where there is full disclosure of all the tenders in the portals. I know there's a requirement in the Public Procurement Disposal Act where all the tenders that are advertised, they're supposed to be put on the portal. So that openness is very important. The number two is full compliance with the procurement procedures. If, for example, a tender is supposed to be open, then it should be open. And this idea of direct procurement, I know it's the most controversial area. That's where people maybe may want to not to be accountable. But for me, the issue is openness, full compliance with the procurement, and of course, also making sure that if it is the affirmative action for the special groups, let them be given an opportunity, like the access to government procurement opportunities, the ACPO, let all that be done. So when there is full compliance with the law, there is full disclosure of what is being advertised, and all the scores, the procurement process is transparent. The fellows who are given the tenders, there should be full disclosure. I don't think whether we'll have that aspect. In fact, that will inculcate the confidence in the public because the process is transparent and open. Thank you.
I think we know we need to be compliant. Why aren't we compliant? So I think that would be a good challenge. So we can open it up now. We can have one of our friends just moving the mic round. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 hands up. We can start here, and then we go to our brother, and then to
transforming the functions. But again, what kind of a resource are we giving? Currently, let's talk about health. About 300 billion is given for health. 150 billion is left with the national government. 150 billion is given to be shared by 47 counties. We are talking about only about 4 hospitals. That is Kenyatta Referral, Moi Referral, Rusekebake, and the fourth one. And then we are talking about all the other hospitals, the main hospitals in the county, they are actually left to share the half. I think that is another question we should actually be asking us basically. 2, as much as we are talking about all the resources and the rest, we are talking about 15% and questions which need to be addressed going to the county when 85 is left in the national government. How long are we going to talk about this as if we don't understand and we make ourselves not to understand? And then when you talk about corruption, it is true. That is why the highest numbers and the highest chunk is actually the national government, because that is where all the revolving money is.
Yes.
When we talk about the county, we are not saying that they are free, but at least the level of accountability is a bit closer because it is near to the people. I think basically we need to have a discussion in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Loudly on the microphone mentions that for over 10 years, no corrupt cases or corruption cases presented by him have been executed to the fullest. And sadly, he says that fellow civil society members are competing with governors to steal, and then another statement that let's push governors out of office. That coming from a senior officer at that level tells us that there is a lack of strategy and failure to understand on your mandate. EACC has told us the work they have done.
Chris,
Thank you.
Take that.
Okay, my name is about the youth. As the panel, I would like to advise you, even there, I haven't seen anything talking about youth. At least whenever you do the program of devolutions, try to consider us. At least you find that some youth, they are trying their best to attend the meeting, even without allowance, because youth mumetusahau, jensi mutukumbuke, mukipanga mpango, at least tukue part a parcel of the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
To answer questions, it's not, the decisions are not made on the strength of the evidence presented, but the amount of money you can dish out to the committee members. What is EACC doing now to focus their eyes and their guns on the corruption that is affecting effective oversight in the legislative arm of government? I'm even worried that the county assemblies have perfected this. You summon officers not to go deep and address the accountability issue, but it's an opportunity for you to make money. What is EACC doing? Because this is defeating oversight.
Thank you.
Research in County Budget Transparency, OGP Local Steering Committee. Now, my straight question, what is so hard to comply with the law that you have put in place, like the PFM, like the constitution that you have? What is so hard? Because we have, even the president that alluded that so many laws have been passed, and even the chair for the county assembly. I'm so much disturbed that the county has become so much difficult to comply with the best practice and to adhere. And that one will only come when you have good political will. This good political will is just a reflection that we need to have access, timely access to information. We cannot have data-driven evidence without information. Then you have also talked about money follows function. Very well put. My question is that county have been getting disbursement. Does it correlate to value for money? What is these little resources that we can celebrate or try to count as we try to measure devolution? What are the mileage? What are the achievements before all the functions are fully devolved?
Would be that we are all here talking on something around public participation, on matters just to ensuring that the public is well represented in matters decision making. And one of the tools that I want to believe the crafters of CPEF was to ensure that the public is well engaged and well represented by CPEF. But it is a concern that we need to do something to empower CPEF across the country. Because it's very unfortunate that we are having counties up to now that they've not even implemented or even established their CPEF board. So kindly, as we engage, as much as we're talking about public participation, one of the areas that we really need to put attention to and fully put attention to, not just government itself, but even civil society organization, is on area around CPEF. If you're well strengthen and empower that, then we may be able to get on the principle around public participation. Thank you.
That hinder smooth transfer. That is under legal and policy framework. Another question on funding and resource allocation. How do we ensure that the transfer of functions is matched with the adequate financial resources and not just responsibilities?
Please come again on the last one.
It's straight away. The emerging trend, we also hear about it. We hear about it, and even His Excellency mentioned it. One of the things is that in terms of investigation of corruption, when it comes to real investigation, you don't use rumors. Rumors is information. You use it as information. So you employ intelligence to find out more. That is something we can pick up for intelligence. But in terms of if there is any report that people are going to see the Senate or they are going to see a certain county assembly and someone gives us confidential information, you can be sure we'll have to arrest those people. We'll mount an operation because that's a primary test. That's not like procurement where we can go when it has been done. In a way, this is something which is done where the parties agree. And the moment they agree successfully, I'm sure they don't do it during daytime, then it's difficult. So what I'll urge us is to ensure if there is any information, let us have it and we will act. Number two, on the same, who are these senators? Who are these county MCAs? They are people we have elected. One of the biggest plots to the issue of corruption is the leaders we elect. And those leaders come from us, me and you, and the Mwananchi. Let us look at that.
Thank you very much, Charles. You're saying that we need to look inwards. Chris, you have a right of reply.
Okay, I have a right of reply. I think when my friend feel the pain, I'm happy that we feel the pain. The reason I'm saying that, because if the law has failed us, we must use extrajudicial means to fight corruption. And there's no apology there. Two, on civil society, we have a duty to protect the right of citizen. So when we are co-opted too much that you cannot function, then that is where we are failing. That's what I said. And when you fail at that extent, you don't no longer serve the interest you're supposed to serve. You and me knows that all of us here, people build hotels with our money and we go to those hotels, I'm sure you must be working with ethics and corruption, or that agency on that matter, or agent of an institution that supposed to provide oversight. If you get to your county, people take your money, build a hotel, even civil society still go to those hotels to give their business. Is that not conspiracy enough? Thank you.
To go straight to the two issues that were raised. First, by the CC for Kakamega, on where the gaps on policy and legislative implementation. I'll tell you straight, the gap in the IGRA and IGR space is the lack of effective intergovernmental relations unit in the counties. As we speak, there are very few counties that have a collaborative framework between the county government and national government agencies within that county. The same also goes to implementation of national policies by county governments and vice versa, national government agencies implementing county government policies. That would be the straightforward. Secondly, to the issue that was raised by I recognize him, the County Secretary for Nyandarua, on the issue of the functions. I think the issue of matching, being able to say how much money is retained for what level of functions in either level of government goes to two things. One, do we have a standard of service delivery in this country? Have we established proper costing of the functions in this country? I would say no. So that is where we have a problem, where through the budget making process, the National Assembly and Senate, same also to the county assemblies, what is the basis of the allocation of those resources? So there is no basis, there is no standard that we are using for us to be able to say how much are we allocating to either level. Lastly, the big question, what can we do, or what do you have to do for us to be able to say we're implementing the Constitution fully? Two things. One, as we speak, in 2012, during the implementation of the Constitution, the promulgation of the Constitution, the youth who are 16 years of age did not participate in the Constitution making or the implementation. They are now 28 years. Have we gone back to sensitize and educate the citizenry who are now active on what actually governance and devolution is? Secondly, ask yourself, someone who was born, my friend from Danish Embassy, someone who was born in 2013 is how old now? Is 13, 14 years old. These are the active citizens now on Twitter and these other TikTok spaces. Do they even understand governance? Do they understand devolution? So there has to be a framework for continuous citizen sensitization and education. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful. And I'm aware His Excellency has begged to leave. We're asking for just a bit so that we wind up and close with a group photo. Thank you for your insights, for your impassioned submissions, and apologies we ran over time. We had a very coming out that will then inform the way forward so that this panel has action up to some tukiwa hapa. Let us read it. If it has refused to the issues coming out from here, because we recognize these are not necessarily new conversations. Some of them are, long-standing issues, but fresh perspectives coming out. So one, we noted that with the Council of Governors, there is now a need for them to be more intentional about engaging civil society and the public on an ongoing basis. And that may require a discussion between a review of this process and an agreement on how the COG, as part of this conference, can be more effective in engaging civil society and the public. We also looked at the issue of functions and the funding, and said that there was a proposal by the Civil Society Devolution Working Group that the funds should be incorporated in the forthcoming budget, so that the process that's ongoing should have those funds already incorporated. The position we got from IGRTC is that this will be part of the next year funding. So maybe we need both. We need some money this year, and we need the MTEL. I can see the CEO is saying it's not possible, but we know with political will it is all possible. So maybe there is need for a discussion on how this issue can be unlocked because it's an ongoing promise. We also looked at the legislative, the omnibus bill and the public participation bill, and recognized this is a role of parliament, but there is need for some collaboration between the working group and the stakeholders to see how do we prioritize and make this compelling. We looked at the need for streamlining of administration and compliance because the transfers to of the share of county of the equitable share, really that's an administrative issue. It's an issue of a culture that needs to be built. So the focus is on treasury and compliance to the law. Also the issue of stalled projects. I think there have been many efforts that have been put up to address the issue of these stalled projects. So there's a need to revisit those and reactivate them so that this can be actioned. The issue of supplementary budgets, I think this is, maybe there's an administrative circular or something, or the legislative review that needs to be looked at, but how do we streamline these administrative and compliance issues? Then accountability. I think it was stated here by the Civil Society Devolution Working Group that they will institute citizen audits, citizen juries. And I think there's an opportunity for collaboration with progressive county governments who already embrace this practice. There's a need also for conflict of interest and these key legislation that are pending in Parliament to be activated. That also includes the campaign financing and things like that. So I think here the Devolution Working Group again can work with the Council of Governors to pinpoint these actions. On public participation and social accountability, there were issues about this public participation not being actionable. There was a costing of public participation that was undertaken by the CRA, and they had recommended 2% of county budgets go towards public participation for the civic education and all of that, because there is no function that can run without finance. So there is a quick win here that counties can institute. Some already do that financing, others don't. So maybe looking at the best practice and ensuring that all counties allocate at least 2% to civic education and public participation. So we had captured these and we will be sharing so that they can be refined and put into an actionable matrix so that coming out of here we can say we spent time deliberating devolution and good governance and on behalf of the people of Kenya and came up with actionable recommendations. So you'll allow me kindly to end there and quickly invite Jacob Ngumi, who is with the Kenya Civil Society Devolution Working Group, to enable us close the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wanjiru Gikonyo, of the Kenya Devolution CS Working Group. And I would like to mention some action points which will be taken up by the working group. One, we need to conduct a citizens post-devolution conference. We see out of these issues which were done by the panelists and the questions emanating from the participants in this meeting, we shall develop or organize a citizens devolution conference post-DEFCON to analyze these issues and be able to comprehend what we can do. We shall also look at advocating and tackling the issue of corruption, what measures can be done to tackle corruption. We shall also push for the enactment of the policies and legislation, both at county and national level, to ensure the gaps which have been identified have been tackled. One of the issues emanating from this discussion is a lack of meaningful public participation, and we would like to see how we can engage both COG and national government, Ministry of Devolution, in terms of having structures and systems in place for meaningful public participation. In the end, we intend to partner with the government side. Here, as you see, we have a Ministry of Devolution, we have all the government agencies, ESCC and the rest, to partner with you in terms of KOG, Outer General and the rest, to partner with you in terms of addressing some of the issues emerging. We shall also partner with CSOs who are here today. If you have been part of us, like Kenya Human Rights Commission, we have Twaweza, we have Uraya, we have ACT, we have TISA and others. We are going to partner with you to be able to make sure that we take the issues further down to the grassroots. Internally, the Kenya Devolution CSO Working Group has two structures which are very critical. The 47 county CSO networks are platforms you can use as a government agencies to be able to address some of the issues you're having. Yes. Two structures which are very critical. We have a devolution study group and a youth caucus who will be helping us to achieve our objectives. Thank you so much. And we thank you for coming. Participants and the panelists and everybody, moderators, for taking this initiative to be with us. And we wish you well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, my panelists and my audience, for your time. I would graciously request that we take a group photo down here before we let you go. And please, you may carry your gift pack. That is coming from the Kenya Devolution CSOs Working Group and ACT and Uraya for your time. So probably we could take the stage down here and we take a photo.